Classified Crime is on the case of Sarah Boone, and today we are going to review her June 2025 call logs from Lowell Correctional Institution, where she currently resides. In case you missed it, I made an adjustment to the May call logs after reading some viewer feedback in the comments. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out, the last video that I did, because I was mistaken in one of the numbers I identified, allegedly. I am including the corrected chart here if you want to jump straight to the end results, because that's my motto, get to the point. I will also link the video here if you want to go back and watch it. Now let's dive into the calls. Okay, so the report ended, the last report I had ended May 28th, and this was the last call here. This call to Nicole was the last call on that report. To the first new call for May that we have is to Peter on the 28th. They talked for 25 minutes. Then Peter on the 28th, they talked for about 30 minutes. Then her son on the 28th, they talked for 14 and a half minutes. On the 29th, she called her son, not answered. This one doesn't say, this report is a little bit different. It doesn't say not accepted, not answered. It doesn't say free call over here, any of that. It just gives us the duration. So I'm just going to say they didn't talk or not accepted, either one. Then she called Nicole on the 29th. They talked for about 10 minutes. Her son on the 30th. They talked for about 3.5 minutes. Then Nicole on the 30th, not accepted. Nicole again, not accepted. Nicole again, and they talked for about 10 minutes. And then on the 30th, she called her son, not accepted. And then she called her son again on the 30th, not accepted. Then Peter, not accepted. Then her son, and they did talk for about 30 minutes. On the 31st, she called Nicole, it was not accepted. Then Peter, it was not accepted. Then her son, it was not accepted. Then her brother, it was not accepted. Then Peter, it was not accepted. Then Peter talked to her for 3 minutes. And then Peter, again, not accepted. Peter, again, not accepted. And then the last call of May on the 31st was Peter, and they talked for 7 minutes, 12 seconds. So that's the end of May. And then I updated the totals of the May chart to include the 28th through the 31st. So we can take a look at that. Now, after going over those few days left in May, I added those calls into the May chart and readjusted it. So for all you chart nerds out there like me who like the statistics, I added those into the month of May. I just couldn't bring myself to add them into June. It just didn't seem right. So for Julian, we still have one call, one accepted, 100%. Peter, 57 calls, 19 accepted for 33%. Her brother, 10 calls, one accepted for 10%. Christina, no calls, none accepted, 0%. Christina has exited the chat. Brian, 36 calls, only 2 accepted, still at that 5%. Her son, 65 calls, 18 accepted, so 28%. And Nicole, 62 calls, 25 accepted for 40%. So Nicole, as far as percentage, with exception of Julian, because he's kind of an outlier if you're a statistics person, Nicole, you're the number one caller. Okay, picking up with June 1st. The first call made was to Nicole. It was accepted, and they talked for about 30 minutes. Then her son, not accepted. Then her son again, not accepted a minute later. Then Peter on the 1st, and they talked for about 30 minutes. And those are the only 2 accepted calls, were Nicole and Peter on the 1st of June. On June 2nd, she called Brian twice, 2 minutes apart. They were not accepted. Good job, Brian. Nicole on the 2nd, twice. They were not accepted. And then Brian again on the 2nd later on, and that was not accepted. Her son on the 2nd, not accepted. Her son again, 1 minute later, not accepted. Brian again on the second, not accepted. Her son again on the second, not accepted. Brian again on the second, not accepted. Now, since this is the month of June, Florida schools are usually out of school the entire month of June and July. So that's usually the summer break down here. But I can't say 100% that he's out for the summer. He could be at a summer camp. I don't know. But I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, and then on the second, we have Peter, not accepted, and then Peter, not accepted. Peter again, not accepted. Peter again, not accepted. She called her son on the second. It was not accepted. Peter again, 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 not accepted. So all of those are on the second. And then 3 more calls to Peter on the third, all of them not accepted. She then called her son on the third. It was not accepted. And then she called Peter again on the third, not accepted. And every single call on this page was not accepted. Whole page. Okay. Moving on. On the third, she attempted Peter again. It was not accepted. On the third again, Peter, a minute later, not accepted. Now, this is a new person. His name is John K. He's from the Orlando area. I haven't found out much else about him other than he's close to Sarah's age. He's from Orlando. I'm not sure how she knows him, but she first calls him on June 3rd at 9 in the morning. They speak for 4 minutes, 40 seconds. She then calls him on June 3rd again, an hour later, and they speak for 19 minutes. She then calls Peter on the 3rd, not accepted. Peter on the 3rd, not accepted. Her son on the 3rd, not accepted. Then her son again, and they talk for about 30 minutes. She then calls Peter on the 3rd, not accepted. She then calls Peter on the 4th, and they speak for about 10 and a half minutes. She calls Peter again on the 4th, and they speak, it was not accepted. She calls him a minute later, not accepted. Peter again 2 minutes later, not accepted. Peter again 1 minute later, not accepted. Peter again 1 minute later, not accepted. Peter again a minute later, not accepted. So Peter's still busy. Then she calls her new friend John on the 5th, and they spoke for 30 minutes. She then tries Brian twice on the 6th, and it was not accepted. She calls John twice on the 8th, both not accepted. So he took the first 3 calls she made to him, and then he's like, okay, back off. That's enough. All right, her son on the 8th, not accepted. Her son again on the 8th, 2 minutes later, not accepted. She calls John twice back to back. About 2 hours apart. The first time they talk for 4.5 minutes. The second time they talk for 25.5 minutes on the 9th. She then calls her son on the 9th. It's not accepted. Her son again on the 9th, not accepted. She then calls Peter on the 9th, and they speak for about 30 minutes. Her son gets a call again. It's not accepted. He gets another call on the 9th, and they speak for about 10 minutes. And then she calls him on the 10th, and they speak for 25.5 minutes. Peter, she calls on the 11th, and it's not accepted. Then she calls her son on the 11th, not accepted. A minute later, she calls her son. It's not accepted. Around 11, this is on the 12th, around 11 o'clock, she calls her son, and they speak for 30 seconds, or maybe she left him a voicemail. On the 18th, so we made a big jump in calls from the 12th to the 18th here. She calls her son on the 18th, and there's a 1 second duration, so I don't know if she just hung up after the connection or what. Her son gets a second call on the 18th, not accepted. A third call on the 18th, not accepted. A fourth call on the 18th, and they talk for 14 and a half minutes. Peter gets two calls on the 18th, back to back, and both are not accepted. And then he gets a call on the 19th, not accepted. There is some thunder outside if you hear that. Peter on the 19th gets another call, not accepted. Another one a minute later for Peter, not accepted. John gets two calls back to back on the 19th. Both are not accepted. Then Peter gets another call on the 19th, not accepted. Then John gets another call on the 19th, not accepted. All of these are at between 8 and 9 in the morning. Peter gets another call on the 19th, not accepted. Peter again on the 19th, not accepted. Peter again on the 19th, not accepted. And then we have two more calls to John on the 19th after 9 o'clock in the morning. Both are not accepted. So John is kind of figuring out the pattern and not accepting her calls. All right. And then we have Peter on the 19th, not accepted. And then Peter on the 19th for 30 minutes. And then Peter again on the 19th, an hour later for 30 minutes again. Her son, she tries on the 19th, not accepted. And then she tries him 2 minutes later, and they speak for about 15 minutes. Peter on the 20th, they speak for 25 and a half minutes. Then John, she tries again on the 20th, and it's not accepted. Her brother, she calls on the 20th. They spoke for about 16 minutes. She called John twice again on the 20th in the evening, and both were not accepted. I'm going to look into more a little bit that I can find out about John, but it looks like he just talked to her a few times and then ghosted her. All right, her son gets called again on the 20th, not accepted, and then her son again, and they speak for just under 9 minutes. She calls her son again on the 20th, and they speak for about 3 minutes. She then makes a series of calls to Nicole. These are all on the 21st. Let's see. And they're all not accepted. So Nicole was unavailable on the 21st between 9:58 and 10:55 a.m. She calls Billy Lane, and he accepted for 1 minute. So he will be charging her for that minute. I'm sure she'll get an invoice. Kevin Beck. She attempted calling him on the 21st. It was not accepted. Remember, Kevin Beck was one of the 3 attorneys. He was a friend of James Owens that I think he lived in Arizona, New Mexico, somewhere over there. And he was helping. He wasn't very active with questioning during the trial, but he was kind of a supportive part of the team. So she reached out to him. Now, let's look at the court docket and see what was going on at that time. Okay, so this is her appeals court docket. And let's see, that was the 21st. So on the 13th, during the month of May, they're still uploading their transcripts and exhibits. On the 13th of June, that is when they made the order that within 20 days from the date of the order, the appellant had to serve an initial brief, or the appeal could be dismissed without any further notice. And then on the 24th, that's when Joshua Adams filed the motion for extension of time to serve the initial brief. So between the 13th and the 24th, that's when they had the warning and then the motion. And then on the 1st of July, that motion was granted. Now, we still don't know what's going on with her attorney. Let's see if he's listed here under parties. Yeah, he's still here. So they haven't withdrawn him from the case. But that's what was going on during that time, just for context. Now let's look back at these calls. So after Kevin Beck, she then tried to call her son on the 21st, and they spoke for about 30 minutes. And then we have a series of calls to Nicole between the 21st and 22nd. So on the 21st, she called Nicole, not accepted. 2 minutes later, not accepted. She called Nicole on the 22nd, not accepted. 22nd again, not accepted. 22nd again, not accepted. And then on the 22nd, she called Nicole and they spoke for about 30 minutes at 10:48 a.m. She calls Billy Lane on the 22nd 3 times. So she calls him about 1 p.m., not accepted. A minute later, not accepted. She then tries Peter. They speak for 30 minutes. And then she goes back to Billy Lane and it was not accepted. So he did talk to her for that 1 minute down here. And then she calls her son on the 22nd, and there's a 39-second duration. So they could have briefly said hi, or she could have left a voicemail. All right, Billy Lane, 2 more times on the 22nd, and it was not accepted. She then called David L., the friend. She has a couple friend in Florida that I think took her dogs for her, and they spoke for 30 minutes. So that's David. She then called Nicole on the 23rd. They spoke for 4.5 minutes. Then her son on the 23rd, 3 times, each a minute or 2 apart, and those were not accepted. She then tried Brian a minute after that, and that was not accepted. Peter, she called on the 23rd, not accepted. She then tried her attorney, Joshua Adams, on the 23rd, and those were both not accepted. So these are the only 2 actual call attempts she makes to Mr. Adams. She then reached out to Billy Lane again on the 23rd, and he spoke to her for 15.5 minutes. Okay. Peter, twice on the 23rd, not accepted. Then she called her son on the 23rd. It was not accepted. She called her brother on the 23rd, and it was not accepted. She then calls Nicole twice on the 24th, both not accepted. Where are you, Nicole? Her son on the 24th, not accepted. And then Peter on the 24th, not accepted. Oh, I'm sorry. For Billy, I made a mistake there. He didn't speak to her for 15 minutes. That was the time of day. She called him at 15:31. They spoke for 13.5 minutes. Sorry about that. Okay. And then we have Peter on the 24th, not accepted. Her son on the 24th, not accepted. Brian on the 24th, not accepted. Brian on the 24th, not accepted. Brian on the 24th, not accepted. Nicole on the 24th, 2 minutes apart. So she called Nicole twice, 2 minutes apart. Both were not accepted. She then called her brother on the 24th. It was not accepted. Then Brian again on the 24th, not accepted. She tried Nicole again on the 24th, not accepted. She tried Peter on the 24th, not accepted. She is striking out all day. On the 24th, she tries her son. It's not accepted. Then Brian, not accepted. Then Brian, not accepted. Then Brian, not accepted. She then on the 25th finally gets a hold of someone, and it is Nicole, and they speak for 30 minutes. She calls her son on the 25th. It's not accepted. She calls Peter on the 25th. It's not accepted. She calls Julian on the 25th. They speak for about 30 minutes. She calls Peter on the 25th, not accepted. Peter on the 25th, not accepted. She then calls Peter on the 25th, not accepted. Her son on the 25th, not accepted. Nicole on the 26th, not accepted. Nicole again on the 26th, 2 minutes later, and they spoke for 1.5 minutes, or she left a short message. On the 26th, Peter, not accepted. Peter again, 1 minute later, not accepted. Julian on the 26th, not accepted. Brian on the 26th, they did speak for 3.5 minutes. Peter on the 26th, they spoke for about 30 minutes. Her son on the 26th, they spoke for almost 8 minutes. And Nicole on the 27th. So a new day here. We have 4 rapid fire calls to Nicole. One at 10:01, 10:04, 10:46, 10:48. All not accepted. Brother, she calls on the 27th, and that was not accepted. She calls Nicole twice on the 28th, 2 minutes apart. The first was not accepted. And the second one, she talks to her for 25 minutes. Her son, she calls on the 28th, and they speak for 21 minutes. So she's having better luck now. Nicole, 29th, twice, 2 minutes apart, not accepted. Peter, on the 29th, not accepted. I wonder what time zone Nicole is in when she's calling. That could have something to do with it. All right, Peter on the 29th, not accepted. Her brother on the 29th, not accepted. David again on the 29th, it was not accepted. This was a wrong number. I think she was trying to call David. It was a 1 minute duration, so maybe just finding out who the caller was or something. Peter, 29th, not accepted. Peter on the 29th, a minute later, not accepted. Peter on the 29th, another minute later, not accepted. And then she called David again, 29th, not accepted. She called Peter again on the 29th, not accepted. 29th is not a good day for calls. Her son on the 29th, not accepted. Her brother on the 29th, not accepted. Her son on the 29th, not accepted. Peter on the 29th, not accepted. Peter on the 29th, she speaks in for 29 minutes. Then Peter on the 30th, they spoke for just about 5 minutes. This is the last day of the month. Son on the 30th, not accepted. Her son on the 30th, not accepted. Her brother on the 30th, they spoke for about 5 minutes. Her son on the 30th, not accepted. And Brian on the 30th, not accepted. And then the first call she makes July 1st is to her son, which was not accepted. So let's look at the June totals. Now for June totals, we have Julian. There were 2 attempted calls. He only accepted one of them, so 50% acceptance rate. He's still holding those boundaries firm. He might want to hold kind of like a presentation or a talk or a conference with Peter about setting boundaries, because he seems to be good at that. Peter, there were 64 attempted calls. He only accepted 11 of them, so his percentage rate went down to 17%. Her brother, she attempted to call 7 times. He accepted twice for 29%. John K., the new character that we have, there were 14 attempted calls. He accepted 5, most of them earlier on. The first few calls she made to him, that is a 36% acceptance rate. Brian gets 2 stickers this week because he also held firm with his boundaries. There were 17 attempted calls. He only accepted 1 for a 5% acceptance rate. So he's staying steady, holding those boundaries. Her son, 44 calls attempted, 13 accepted for a 30% acceptance rate. Nicole, 31 calls attempted, 6 accepted for a 19% acceptance rate. So not sure what happened, if she was just busy or not able to answer the phone. Billy Lane, 7 attempted calls, only 2 accepted for a 29% acceptance rate. Sarah, you may be getting an invoice in the mail. Joshua Adams, 2 calls, 0 accepted for a 0% acceptance rate. Kevin Beck, I guess, was a Hail Mary call. She called him once. He didn't accept, so 0%. And then David L., her friend, 3 attempted calls, 1 accepted, 33% acceptance rate. Now let's take a look at who John K. might be. From what I found that matched the phone number and the name that was in the call log, he lives in the Orlando, Florida area. He's 44 years old. He currently works as an engineer for a large company. He served in the military, and he doesn't have a lot of legal issues. He's only had 2 traffic tickets in Orange County, Florida since 2012. So he's a pretty good driver. This is all that I found of him so far. I don't know if maybe Sarah knows him through her brother or if they know each other from growing up in the Orlando area, but this is what I could find on him. It seems like he took a couple calls from her so far and lost interest real quick. Can't imagine why. Anyway, that's all I have for you for the June calls. I only have 16 days worth of the July calls on this report that I got. So I can do half of July, or we can wait until the end of August and do all of July and August. I'll request more at the end of the month. So let me know in the comments what you would prefer, to go ahead and see the July that I have or wait and do the complete month. We can do either one. And as always, thank you so much for watching.